Hey guys, it's me, Julian Greystoke. We're filming at night, but that's okay because Nigel is here. We're going to talk about a freaky book that I recently finished. I know, for once, I'm talking about a book that I recently finished. The book is called Sawkill Girls, and it's been on my TBR for a while. This is the story of three girls whose fates intertwine on Sawkill Rock, this small island where a bunch of Richie Riches live and breed horses. I don't know either. But there's something mysterious going on Sawkill Island. Supernatural shit is going down, and the girls, who come from very different worlds, find themselves in the middle of it. And I think that's all the synopsis I'm going to give you. I'm just going to kind of get into talking about the book, and I don't want to spoil too much because it's wild. It is wild. And it seems like people either hate or love this book, and once again I've kind of fallen into the middle ground here. So one thing I will definitely mention, especially at the beginning half of this book, is scenes are very jumpy. I was listening to this book, as usual, and we went from on a boat to in a parking lot, with nothing in between, no mention of them having disembarked from the boat. And so I thought that I had missed a whole ass scene. I was like, did my thing skip? Like, what happened? But no, it's just that this author does not believe in transitional scenes. You're here and then you're there. It's almost like a movie. It's just like, and hard cut, next scene. And that can be a little bit confusing. And maybe it's less so if you're reading it. Maybe it's more indicated on the page, but there was no indication if you were listening to it. And it was... yeah, it was confusing. I was like, where am I now? What's happening? At one point later on, one of the characters just is suddenly walking through the woods with fish. And you're like, where did the fish come from? Why do you have the fish? Why didn't we watch you get the fish? It's just like, what? Nigel, oh my goodness. Later in the book, either I got used to it or it stopped happening as much, but yeah, the first like half of the book at least, it was a little bit distracting that we were jumping scenes so aggressively. Right away I knew something was up, and I feel a bit like a Clever Boots because there was a really weird scene involving a cop and his horse, and I was like, that would never happen. And then it turned out that it wouldn't ever happen. It's because of supernatural shit going down. Woo! So at the beginning, our character, once we have jumped to the parking lot, her mom and her sister are inside the store shopping, and she's outside for reasons, and there's a mounted policeman comes by, and he is like, do you want to ride my horse? And I'm like, there's a number of problems with this, but okay, it's a small town. And then he puts her up on the horse loses its shit, because supernatural things, and the horse takes off with her, and somehow, though she has never ridden a horse before, she rides several rears, and just takes off on this horse. Fun fact, newbie riders, when you first put them on a horse for the first time, will fall off if the horse shifts weird. So the fact that she stayed on it for all of this stuff, you know something supernatural has to be going on. So yeah, I felt like a bit of a Clever Boots because I was like, no, none of this is realistic. And then it turned out it wasn't because, ooh, spooky. By the way, horses were harmed in the making of this book, so if you are a horse fan, go in knowing that bad things happen to horses. This book definitely felt like Stephen King meets H.P. Lovecraft meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If all of those things wrapped up together sound good to you, maybe check this book out. Along with the scenes being very abrupt, like scene, there also is very little description of location. So if that's something that you don't like, this book might frustrate you at times. It frustrated me. I do like to have at least a little description of where I am. There would be some things described if it was maybe important, but like, I personally like to know a little bit more. There was a bit of sort of white room syndrome where the characters are standing around talking and you kind of have an idea of where they are, but you're really left to your own devices to supply the entire makeup of wherever the characters happen to be most of the time, unless they go someplace supernatural then it can be described for you. The characters themselves mostly exist to further the plot. Nobody felt very deep. Maybe it's the pacing is part of the problem with that, but this book is a plot-driven book, and if you are not into that, I would say go into this one with a little bit more caution, because I really enjoyed the plot, and I thought it was cool, and I liked the mystery, and I liked trying to figure it out, but I wasn't attached to any of the main characters, and we didn't seem to feel with them like we really could have. And there are bad things that happen to these girls that we should feel with them, and I really didn't. The only one that I actually could kind of like feel like I was relating to was the bitchy one, and that's because really some really shitty things were happening to her that were beyond her control, and I was like, okay, I'm able to relate to things like that, but like ultimately all of these characters were very shallow and they exist for the plot. I will say that this book has a lot of queer characters, so if you're interested in a horror book with queer girls in it, this is the book for you. There's a lesbian character, a bisexual character, and yes, and on the page, canon confirmed, asexual character. Holy shitballs, it's super rare to find an asexual character just existing in a story where it's on the page canon that she is asexual, and she's not aromantic, and that whole situation is discussed. I was like, my asexual heart grew 3 sizes that day. I was so happy. Again, this reminded me of Stephen King. I kept coming back to that in my notes. But it's Stephen King if Stephen King pared everything way, way down. You know how King loves to be in-depth about all of his characters? Not really any of that. It's more just like the tones of his stories and sometimes the gross-out horror of his stories and just the feel of his stories. And also, as I said, H.P. Lovecraft, but instead of hating minorities and women, this book kind of hates rich people. This book is very female-led. There are, as I said, 3 girls, and they are the main characters. There's a dad character who plays a big part, and there's some other male side characters who do play a certain role. It's really about the girls and their thing, and there is a boy teen character who is pursuing one of the girls, but I was a little bit disappointed in him because he's the mom friend, he's the gentle boy, and that's great, I like that, but he's so shallow, and he's so just there to be sort of like the perfect boyfriend. He's kind of like, you know how it used to be a lot more that you'd have male characters in stories and it'd be male-centric and male-driven, and then you'd have a female character or 2, but they mostly existed to be perfect love interests, and that's it. Feels like we flip-flopped. And I would prefer if all my characters are well-rounded. Male, female, non-binary, doesn't matter. I just want them all to be well-rounded. And this guy felt super, super flat. All of the characters are kind of flat, but him especially. He was there being the mom friend, being the one who takes care of them, being the perfect boyfriend material, and didn't really have anything of his own. I did have a little bit more about the asexual character. I think this book might be a really great way to help non-aces understand a little bit more, because we are in the head of the asexual character and she is struggling with the realization that she had sex once and has realized that she doesn't ever want to have it again. It wasn't traumatizing, she wasn't assaulted, she just doesn't care for it. I think that being in the headspace of someone who's going through that and wondering if they're broken and trying to deal with their relationship and wondering if they can ever have a boyfriend, it would be helpful for non-aces to maybe start to empathize with what it's like to be asexual. And finally, this book was limping itself along at about a 2 to 3 star range, but the ending popped it up to 4 for me. The ending is going to be really subjective for you. I feel like this is where people either love it or hate it. And I don't want to reveal too much about the ending, but this is where all of the themes really start popping up. And I will talk a little bit about what the themes are, and it made me really excited. It made me sit up and go, oh fuck, yes, because we really started to talk about some interesting things that I was interested in anyway. Some people might think it's a little bit heavy-handed, and I do wish it had been better spread throughout the book, but when it gets to the end, I was here for it. One of the themes that it explored is the power of women together and how society has taught us that we should fight each other, that we should see each other as enemies and rivals, when instead, if we ally with each other, we are so much stronger. And there is also the theme of women and girls throughout history and even mythology being sacrifices, being treated as objects for the monster to consume, to kidnap, to harm, and just dissecting that whole trope, and I was so there for it. I liked those themes being explored and being subverted and being crushed. Like I said, some people could perhaps see it as a bit heavy-handed. I was here for it, but that doesn't mean that everyone will be. However, if a dissection of those themes sounds interesting to you, I would definitely check out this book. You do have to stick with it a little bit. I think the second part, or even, the last part, is much stronger than the first part, but the first part does still have an interesting mystery and enough going on that it keeps you engaged. The villain is a big... Again, this is one of the villains that I like. You know that I have a soft spot for those inscrutable villains that you have no idea how the main character is going to defeat. It's just this unholy creature, and you don't know how they're ever going to possibly deal with this thing. It's too big, it's too powerful, it's inhuman. And you guys know I'm there for that kind of villain. So if all of this stuff sounds enticing to you, I would definitely recommend you check out Sawkill Girls. I enjoyed my time with it. Not quite a 5-star read, but pretty close. Have any of you guys already read Sawkill Girls? What did you think about it? Comment below and let me know. You guys know that I post Mondays and Fridays, and there's a ton of stuff already here on this channel. I've been doing this for quite a while, so you can feel free to wander around and check things out. There's playlists, super easy for binging. If you want to see some content that's not here on the channel, there is exclusive content over on Patreon that you can see for as little as $1 a month. And you can follow me on my social media. All of it is linked in the doobly-doo for ease of your clicking. I will see you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye! Well, it's that time again. It's time to thank my amazing patrons of the month. This month we have Lennox, Amanda, Baruch, Irene, Jenny, Kim, Lisa, Sabby Panda, Sam, Sarah, Savvy, and Scribbling Cat. And I hope all my patrons continue to support me because they are the very best, like no one ever was.